up, everyone? Welcome to an all-new episode of Casters of Horror. I'm Shane, and this week I'll be talking about The First Omen. Written in part and directed by Arkasha Stevenson in what I believe is her directorial debut. The First Omen serves as a prequel to the classic horror trilogy that ran from the, I believe, late 70s to early 90s. That series starred some pretty big names of the time. Let's see, in the first one we had Gregory Peck and Lee Remick, obviously two very high-profile names during their time. But also Patrick Troughton was in this one. For you Doctor Who fans, I actually didn't know that. And then out of the sequels, had William Holden was in the second one, and then a young Sam Neill actually was in the third one, playing the role of taking up the role of Damien, the Antichrist, as a young man. So yeah, if you are unfamiliar with these films, they follow the basically rise to power of the Antichrist. Right, the first film is about this couple who are they are given this child, they adopt this child, and it turns out to be the Antichrist. And obviously chaos ensues. Chaos follows this character wherever he goes. Typical, Antichrist stuff going on with that, with a complete bungling, the Hollywood interpretation of what that character is supposed to be and what 666 is supposed to be, So typical Hollywood fare there. And this prequel tells the story behind the story, basically what led up to that happening in those original films. The First Omen follows Margaret Dano. She is an American who grew up in an orphanage, and this is, Margaret Dano, let me get the name here, played by Nell Tiger Free. And then the only name I recognize in this film is, of course, the ever amazing Bill Nighy in just being his incredible self and being incredible in this role. One of those actors, again, we've mentioned, that just elevates whatever he's in. But anyway, the film follows Margaret as she is a nun to be, I guess, waiting to take her vows, and Bill Nighy's character, Cardinal Lawrence, brings her to Rome to basically get that process, started so she can complete her vows to be a nun. And while she is there, she kind of starts uncovering these secrets that are going on around her. And there's kind of some moments in the film where she had mentioned that when she was a child, she was plagued by nightmares and evil visions, right? And it was this cardinal who helped her overcome that. Well, she ends up sort of befriending one of the children at this orphanage that she's an attendant at, who has some similar things going on. And the nuns at the church seem to be isolating this girl. And so Margaret takes an interest in her. And, some other things kind of happen throughout the film where you feel like maybe Margaret isn't really sure of this path in her life, but more and more she starts to uncover something's going on, and she's approached by a priest who says, there is a second church within the church that is trying to bring forth the Antichrist, basically so that evil can run free and people will turn back to God. That's the basic premise here, right? I don't really want to say too much. I feel like there's probably supposed to be a massive twist later in this movie, but I would also argue that if it's the sort of thing that you think is actually a twist, I don't know. Media literacy might be an issue. Sorry, but there's no twist in this movie as far as I'm concerned. Now, back when Chris and I reviewed Immaculate, we kind of talked a little bit about this movie and that we wanted to watch this one because these two films, Immaculate and The First Omen, were kind of dubbed twin films because they came out right around the same time. And the consensus that I had heard at the time, and I mentioned in that episode, was that it was a shame these movies came out at the same time because The First Omen is a solid film that gets overshadowed by Immaculate. And I'm not going to argue that it probably did get overshadowed by Immaculate. What I will argue is that there's no good legitimate reason for that to happen, all right? So let me kind of just kind of back up here with Immaculate. Chris and I weren't super impressed by that film. I found it to be incredibly boring and oh, embarrassing writing and dialogue and acting that was at times fine, and that's about as far as I can go with that one. With the First Omen, I will say, as far as my level of engagement, I actually think it was kind of about the same. I found this movie to be a bit slow and plodding, right? Just like Immaculate, I didn't find it to be even remotely scary. There are some, maybe tense moments and some jump scares, obviously. I think there's some moments that are meant to be unsettling, foreboding, right? And I guess it does reach that level, to a small degree. There's a sense, of there is a bit of an unsettling, sense of what's going on around you. However, while I did still find this film to be kind of boring, right, and apart from just the massive sense of deja vu, because there are parts, especially in like the first half of this film, where it almost feels like a beat for beat retelling of Immaculate, right? They end up in different places, and the pathway to get there is maybe a little different, but there's a reason these were called twin films, because they at least for a while they seem very close to one another. Where I actually give the First Omen the edge over Immaculate is in every single category. Okay, the writing, aside from this idea that this sort of plot twist I think they're supposed to be in the middle of the film. Aside from that, I actually think the writing is pretty solid. It has good pacing. The reveals are good, even if I think they're predictable. I think everything flows together nicely. The characters are believable. The acting is really, really good. These are really solid performances. I will give that to the First Omen, which is not something I could even remotely say about Immaculate, except for maybe a few characters here and there, okay? But the characters in this film, they act like people actually act. They react to things that in ways that I would expect people to react to things, right? And I just think that overall the direction this film went is better, right? So we can all guess or speculate reasons why Immaculate was considered the better film. I care about things that actually determine whether or not a film is better, and to me, the First Omen it's not even in the same league here. It's so much better than Immaculate in every conceivable way that it's actually kind of irritating me that I feel like I need to compare it to to that film. But now I will say too, one thing I should point out is I can't speak to how it is as an Omen film, okay? Because while I have a cursory knowledge of those films, I've never seen the original trilogy. I've never seen the remake. There was actually a fourth film. I think it was a made-for-TV film that nobody likes or considers part of the franchise, I guess. And then I think there was a short-lived TV series too. The First Omen is a prequel to the original trilogy. Now, I've never seen them. If you are a fan of the show, you know sort of the situation that Chris and I grew up in. These films about the Antichrist are not the sort of thing that would have been on the table for me to be allowed to watch, right? So I was familiar with them only in the sense that they were, evil because they were about the Antichrist. Even though the Antichrist is clearly the bad guy in this film, right? But I guess we're talking about, a time, these films were released back during the Satanic Panic, and everybody was freaking out about the Antichrist. I guess that was back in the day when people could actually recognize the characteristics of what that character was supposed to be. But anyway, with this film, it carries on all of that typical Hollywood end of days Antichrist 666 nonsense. The there, I will admit there's at least one line in this movie, especially surrounding the 666 thing, that was such a cringe fest for me. It reminded me of a really bad uh, Christian based film I had seen, 20 years ago that kind of used the number 666 in a really, really stupid way. But honestly, at the end of the day, that's a really minor complaint. I think that this film was decent enough for what it was. I don't really think it's my cup of tea. I think I need something that's either a little bit more fast paced or a little bit more mystery or a little bit more horror, right? But I will say I do think this is a solid directorial debut, and the I got to give it to the lead actress, Nell Tiger Free. She was really fantastic as Margaret. Really, really, brought me into that part and made me believe she was experiencing the things that her character was experiencing. So, fantastic work there. I think that this film is good. I guess I would say I would think it's good, even though I found it to be a little boring. I can see why maybe people would have liked it, and as a larger part of the Omen franchise, I will actually say that this kind of does make me want to go watch that original trilogy. Now that I've seen what leads up to the events of those films, I want to see how it plays out. Right, and of course, it would always be a pleasure to see Sam Neill on screen, and I would love to go back and see one of his earlier works. So, yeah, the First Omen. I don't think it's the sort of thing I'd rewatch, but it does make me want to go back and watch that classic trilogy. And if they were to make another one of these for some reason, I'd probably check it out. And I can say that I'm interested to see what Arkasha Stevenson does next, because I really do think that this was a pretty solid first outing in spite of some of the reservations I have. So anyway, that's my opinion on the First Omen. I do absolutely think, regardless of the overall quality film, I do think it was at least better than Immaculate. Sorry, everyone. That's just the truth. But anyway, I'd love to know what you think. Did you like the First Omen? Um, did you like it better than Immaculate? Am I wrong about that? Do you not care about either film? Drop me a comment below, and while you're down there, make sure to hit like and subscribe. We'll be back every week with another horror movie review. But that's all I got for this one. Until next time, thanks for watching. I'll see ya.